So today we're going to meet with Gabi Herring, and we actually found Gabi to do our podcast because of a really great post she made on Facebook. So we're going to be interviewing her about basically like what she looks for in foundation females, right?
Yes, that's correct. Gabby and her family, her farm is a family-owned farm between her parents and her sister, and they've had Longhorns since the late 90s. So I'm excited to hear what she has to say and what she looks for in foundation females.
Me too. Let's get her on and get started.
Hi, I'm
Okay.
Molly. And I'm Jamie, and this is our From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast. As the owners of Hired Hand website software, we've been developing websites and creating internet marketing strategies for livestock breeders for the past 10 years. The majority of our customers are involved in the breeding of registered animals, such as Texas Longhorns, Highland cattle, horses, and whitetail deer, where the pedigrees are very important. The From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast examines many of the differences in raising pedigreed livestock for maximum profit. Join us and learn what we're covering today.
In today's episode, we'll be talking with Gabi Herring from Rancho El Dios. Gabi and her family have been raising Longhorns near Grayford, Texas since 1998. Hey, Gabi, thanks for joining us. Would you mind taking a second to tell us a little bit about Rancho El Dios?
Yes. So my dad got our first Longhorns from Don and Patsy Harrell at Possum Kingdom, and they actually bred quite a few animals that are in a lot of the popular genetics right now. They bred Possum Queen, which is Pacemaker 44's mother, and that went on to, produce Bandera Checks, Cowboy Checks, all of the great bulls that produced a lot that we're using in today's industry. So a lot of our original females go back to those lines that are out of the same genetics. And we've been raising since 1998, and we raised a bull that won a lot, Red Bartholomew, and we took him to the Horn Showcase. I'll probably get the years wrong, but it was, I think, 2005 and 2006, and he won his class at those Horn Showcases. I think that was the year. I could be wrong. And all of our main females that we've raised go back to him. And my dad kind of got too busy with our construction business in the early 2000s, like probably 2007 to 2013. And so when I came back from college, I took over the herd from there. So that's where I come in.
Where did you go to college?
I went to Tarleton. I majored in animal industries, so I have a business minor and an animal science major.
So is this something that you saw yourself doing?
Actually, no. I had kind of, put the Longhorns in the back of my mind. I was more focused on horses whenever I was in college. Funny story, my last semester of college, I interned at Lone Star Arena there in Stephenville, and Russell Fairchild was also one of the managers there at the time. And we got to talking, and I was telling him, like, yeah, we still have all the Longhorns, and because I had met him and known him from whenever we went to the Horn Showcases when I was little. And he was like, yeah, well, I'll come out and, go through your herd with you and see what you got. And we've been full blast ever since. So once he came out, we kind of like cleaned up the herd, got everything that was unregistered out of the herd, and went back to our original females. And he is the reason why I'm so focused on foundation females. Like he helped me really understand all the great qualities that it takes to be a foundation female, and I've just studied and grown from there. And that was in 2013, like I said, when I graduated college, and he came out and helped me get everything started. So
I wonder how many people have a similar story to you, that Russell's kind of been the reason they've either gotten into it to start with or gotten back into it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more than people know. He does a lot behind the scenes that sometimes people don't know about.
Yeah.
He's a big asset in the Longhorn industry, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, earlier this spring, you posted on Facebook about what you look for in the foundation cows. We'd like to go through that list with you and have you expand on those traits and qualities a little bit. I think the first one you had listed is fertility. Can you tell us what you look for with that?
Yes, ma'am. I think that this is something that really needs to be, I guess, expounded on or paid attention to a little more than it is, just in my opinion. Um, I think that these cows, we really need to be emphasizing on cows that are super fertile. Like they need to be breeding back between anywhere from 30 to 90 days after they calve, whenever you put your bull back in, or, depending on your program. If they're not calving if they're not getting bred back, after 30 to 60 days in that time window, after they've calved or after you've put the bull in, you're really losing a lot of time on your timeline on your profitability. Like if they're not breeding back within 6 months, like that's a problem. And people need to kind of pay attention to that stuff. So whether if you're not pulling your bull out and you've got him in all year long, you kind of need to be palpating your cows or paying attention to that so that you know that they're breeding back. And if it's not the cow's fault, you need to make sure that you have plenty of proper nutrition out, like loose mineral blocks, protein, adequate forage at all time. Like those need to be paid attention to make sure your cow has 100% chance to be fertile, and then make sure that that is a trait she has. It's not something that you're lacking in your program that you need to help her with. Or make sure that your bull is fertile too, because you don't want to fault the cow if it's your bull's fault. So you make sure to get him tested. But I feel like if these cows aren't breeding back after at least 60 to 90 days after they've calved, that's kind of an issue. And I don't think that needs to be carried on in the Longhorn industry. I think that other breeds would take us more seriously if we really had some super fertile females going forward.
One of the other things that you mentioned was milking ability. Are there
Mm-hmm.
particular things that you look for in the udder when you're looking at a cow?
Just soundness in all four quarters. Like, you don't want to have just a two quarters on a cow. You might have problems raising a big calf, or the calf might struggle gaining weight through its 5 or 6 months of being with its mother. Health wise, they need that extra nutrition from the milk to grow and stay healthy. I really just make sure they're sound in all four quarters. They have an adequate bag. They're not milk cows, so they don't need to look like a milk cow, but they need to have a pretty decent sized bag. Like if you've got a tiny little udder there, the calf may struggle as well. Make sure the teats aren't too long or too swollen, so the calf to make sure that he can get its mouth around it. Those are just the main things that I look at whenever I'm looking at a udder on a cow. So I want to make sure that passes on to her females that she has.
So Gabby, I don't remember on your original Facebook post if you included photos or not. Are there photos up that like would show a good udder?
I don't think that I have a picture up yet of a cow with a decent udder. I think the pictures that I have are just front facing, so you probably can't see the udder.
Okay.
But I do have one cow that she's a boomerang CP daughter, and they're known for having super udders, and she is huge, almost milk cow style, sound in all four quarters, just a great milker.
Okay. And what's her name, just so people can reference her?
EOT Outback Lady, I think E815. She's
Okay.
got a number after it. She came out of Debbie Bowman's embryo program.
Okay. So number 3 on the list of your previous post was structurally sound. Tell us a little bit about what you're looking for or what you're judging to assure structural soundness.
I start, with the feet and the legs. I want to make sure that they have, four straight, clean legs, that they're framed up underneath themselves. They're not too sickle hawked with their legs too far back out from their hips, or their hocks aren't rubbing together too close in the back where they might break down over time. I also look, make sure that they're balanced on all four legs. They're not too heavy in the front. And I like a cow that's a little bit long bodied, but not too long. She can carry a calf well, not too short bodied. I really look at their hips, their hooks and their pins to make sure that they have, adequate size between their hooks and their pins so that they can have good calving ease.
So not to interrupt you, but for folks that don't know or maybe new, what are hooks and pins?
Okay, so to make sure I get this right, I may get it backwards, but the hooks are at the top of the hips, and the pins are at the back of the hips, towards the back of the cow. And I don't want them to like the hooks tapering in too much, I guess is what to the pins. You want adequate angles, more of a straight angle to where they'll have easier time having a calf. You don't have to pull as much.
What do you, when you say
the
not,
hooks and the pins backwards, but
when you say not too heavy in the front, when you're talking about their feet, what do you mean by that?
So in my mind, it would be like they don't have much of a rump or much of a rear, and they're more, all their weight is on their front feet or on their front legs, and they're just more heavy in the mass in the front instead of balance between their shoulder and their hips. And I do like a cow with a big rump and an adequate size to her hips. I don't want them all front endy, so that their front legs kind of break down over time, and once they get a little older, they're kind of crippled up and they can't really move around too great. A lot of our cows that we got originally from Don and Patsy Harrell, they'd lived till they were 25 because they had just great structure, and they had a lot of longevity to them.
So I think I interrupted you when I asked you that question. Did you have more to share about the hips or the back?
No, that was pretty much it.
Okay.
On also just for my personal preference on females, I really like a clean neck, and I don't like a lot of trash on their brisket. And make sure that their underline is clean as well, that they don't have a big navel or something like that. As just cactus and stuff like that down in Texas, you don't want them getting lots of stickers and stuff in them.
So obviously, like the brisket and the navel, I in my opinion anyway, or my experience, that doesn't play a huge role in like the breeding aspect, but the hips definitely do.
Yes.
So when you're looking for those clean lines and stuff, is there anything else that you're looking for with the hips to make sure that they're going to be, good breeders?
Whenever I'm looking at something like I'm going to buy or whatever, I look at them from behind, and I just make sure that they have a good amount of width. I don't want anything narrow at all. That's just my opinion, and I think that's just a good rule of thumb to make sure that they're not too narrow in the behind or across the back.
Okay. So the next item on the list, number 4, was disposition. So tell us a little bit about, let's start off with specifically when you're looking to buy an animal. Tell us how you judge their disposition in their pen before the sale, the ring during the sale, how those things come into your decision-making process.
It's kind of hard because, if they've never been to town, it's 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 hard to judge them too much if they've never been to town. But
I hear a Dale Hunt echo there when you say I was hearing it's their first time.
Well, I've had experience with this twice now. So I had 2 different cows try to eat me when I got them home, and they were fine in the ring, and but and they were fine back in the pens. But when we got them home, by the time they had traveled from Alabama and been in the pens and through the ring and in the trailer and then back out of the trailer, they were like, "Please leave me alone. I hate you." But once we turned them out and let them be cows for a little while, and then they come back up, they were fine. But so it's kind of hard for me to judge them at the sale, I guess. In the ring, I don't mind if they're a little rowdy, because a lot of the times once you get them home, they're okay. If I like to go back in the pens a little bit, I try not to go in the pens too much, because, you don't know how they are, but around the pens, if they just come out of nowhere and charge you when you're standing at the fence, that's a no-no for me. If they've got other cows in there with them and they're still trying to charge you, that's a no-no for me. If they've just had a baby, I don't fault them too much if they're a little aggressive. I mean, that's kind of naturally their job. They're trying to protect their baby, especially if they're in a new place. They don't know why there's so many people around. They're in the pen. Like, to me, that's just their natural instincts. I don't mess with my cows or when they just had calves. I let them be mama cows for a week or two before I get up in their face or try to, mess with the calf at all. We don't really have any aggressive cows towards us with babies, but I don't mess with them. I let them do their job for the first couple weeks. So, back to your question, I think it's hard at sales, but if they are super aggressive back in the pens at you whenever you're just standing by the fence, I think that's a no-no.
So have you ever had to make a decision, not necessarily with an animal you bought at a sale, but maybe one that is a first-time calver or, has been in your herd a while and you see her disposition changing, whether it be because of age or maybe maybe she lost a calf, difficult birth, things like that. Have you ever culled because of those sorts of things based on disposition?
Yes. I think one time sticks out in my head. We did had an older cow. She lost her calf, and I think she had it in the middle of the night in one of those freak cold storms that we had in North Texas. And so we just decided to retire her because she was 17 at the time, and I just didn't want her to have to um, lose any more cows. And we actually, when we pulled her out of the pasture to retire, I pulled blood on her to see if she was bred, and she actually was. And we put her in a smaller pasture, and she had her next calf fine, and it was in the spring, and so we didn't have later in the spring, so we didn't have any cold weather, and she raised the next calf fine. But now towards like aggressive or anything like that, we really haven't had to cull anything because they were aggressive, being mothers or anything like that. We have really bad coyotes, and so I kind of like them being a little aggressive with their babies at first, the first couple of weeks or a month or so. I've never had them be bad towards me though. So but I'm careful.
So just out of curiosity, do you believe that disposition is a lot of it comes from breeding?
Yes, we did buy a heifer that I didn't know. I knew some of the animals that had come out of this specific bloodlines that were really nice, really big bodied cows, really nice horns. And she turned out to be pretty aggressive and crazy when you get her in the pen. And she stuck her head in the side of the fence and got herself stuck and broke her horn off at the skull.
Oh, wow.
So we had to take her to the vet and get it cut off because it was like it was broken in the skull. It wasn't really, if you would have casted it, I don't know if they would have ever healed correctly. So I think genetics do play a little bit into that because I saw someone else that had bought a young heifer that had the same bloodlines. And it wasn't the same cow that mine was out of, but it was the same sire, and the cow that hers was out of the same bull, so it was the same cross, and hers was crazy too, and she broke her horn off in the chute as well. And so I do think that it is something that is definitely inheritable through genetics on the crazy part and aggressive.
Are there certain things that you look for, like when you're out in the pasture, you're in somebody else's pasture? Are there things that you look for, so you know what their disposition is like, or?
Yeah, if they see you coming and they're high-headed and they've got their neck wrinkled up and their head sucked back up on top of their shoulders, that's usually a bad sign. They're usually going to run away from you, or they're going to do something that you don't like whenever you get close to them. I'm just careful with ones like that whenever they're super high-headed and snorty. That's mainly the ones that we've had the experience with them being high-headed like that whenever you come around, when they're really skittish, or and I think there's a little bit of a difference between them being nervous and skittish and being aggressive. We do have a couple of nervous ones that no, they don't want to be your best friend, but they're really not dangerous if you know how to handle them. Like, you just be easy, don't get in a rush, don't be yelling and screaming and cowboying on them, and just move them around easy. They're fine. But if you got really aggressive with them, they would get aggressive with you. So I think there's a kind of a fine line there, and you got to be smart with what you're doing. So we make sure that our bull is super calm And if we're going to breed, nervous heifers like that, we can kind of breed all that out of them going on forward, which we only have a few, so that are nervous like that. And I've had a couple of them that they were super nervous when they were heifers, but now that they're 2 and 3, they're totally calm. Just, I think it has a lot to do with handling too.
I mean,
whether they get better or worse.
From your list, disposition's probably the hardest to judge, right? I mean,
I would say so, yes. I would just with the nervous ones, those are the ones that we don't sell because we don't want them to become aggressive with somebody else if they don't know what they're doing. And so if we're going to sell one, I want it to be one that's super gentle and as gentle as we have so that, I don't have to worry about them hurting somebody else. But disposition, I would say when you're buying cows, it's kind of hard to tell until you get them to the house.
Love what you're hearing? Be sure to check out our Pickup Truck Confessions. It's a video series where we hop in the truck or rental car and interview a variety of breeders about what drives their passion for their livestock, how they got started in the breed of their choice, marketing tips, and more. And now, back to the podcast.
So the fifth thing on your list, and we've kind of already covered this, is size. Can you explain a little bit more about what you look for? I know we talked about the hips and the mothering ability and that type of thing. What else do you look for?
On the size part, just super small boned and small framed cows. It's just not my preference. I like a cow, 1,000, 1,200 pounds. I want her to be able to raise a big calf at weaning. And now that we're getting a little more aggressive with our butchering and meat business, if you've got a bigger cow, she's going to raise a bigger calf, hopefully, and you may be able to butcher at 18 months instead of having to wait until they're 22 or 24 months. And so that kind of shortens down your profitability market as well. And you don't have to spend as much money on that calf going to butcher. And, just bigger framey females. I think they're more attractive. I think they're more productive. Smaller boned animals, just to me, they're not as hardy as a bigger framed cow. Now we do have one cow. She's like 1,500 pounds. She's humongous. That's that EOT Outback lady I was talking about earlier with the big bag. She's big. She eats a lot of hay. And so like a lot. She's a piglet. And so, you may not want something that big, but I think 1,000, 1,200 pounds is kind of my frame there that I kind of like to stay at. I really don't like cows much smaller than that. I do have a couple, but all their other traits are extremely good, and so I kind of don't dock them too much on size. But going forward, we're trying to make sure that we stay in that range.
And so that's at maturity?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
So the next thing is production. What are your guidelines for that?
So I like consistency with a female on her production. I like to look at the consistency that she's produced with different sires or even with the same sire. If she's all over the place with the same sire or with different sires, it's kind of hard for you to know, hey, if I buy this cow, she's going to be a great producer with my bull, or if I keep her, she's going to produce great with my bull. I really like to look at consistency. And sometimes you can tell that from the pedigrees and sometimes you can't. But we've got one cow that we bought from Mike McLeod's program when Russell Fairchild was there. And we bought her as a bred 2-year-old, and she was bred to high caliber before we bought high caliber. And so she's got her first heifer, who is a 2.5 out of high caliber. And then I've got going to be yearling in June out of our other bull, Rio. And then she took the first take with sex semen when I think it was 45 days after she was bred last year. And then she just calved again with a high caliber bull. So she's had 4 calves, all 10.5 months apart. And so she's super fertile, and every single one of those calves has amazing horn growth. The first 3 heifers are feminine, and the first 3 heifers are all from different sires. And so she's crossed really good with 3 completely different bred sires, and so she's super productive in my opinion. And then we have a cow that we raise that she's line bred, but when we bring in outcross bulls that aren't bred like her at all, she knocks it out of the park. She's a double twist, but she produces a lot of lateral horn, and she produces color and size and perfect udders. And she had 3 heifers out of our Rio bull, and they all had different horn shapes. 2 of them are more twisty, and 1 of them is straight lateral horn. And all 3 of them, before they hit the age of 4, had longer horns than her. And so she's really outproducing herself. I like to see a cow outproduce themselves, either with, like I said, consistent same bull or different bulls bringing in. If they can outproduce themselves, then they're a good foundation female on production.
So do you happen to know the names of the 2 you just referenced so listeners can go and look them up on your website?
Yes, the first one that we've had 4 calves with, her name is Queen Hildegard, SRC, and she's a daughter of Cowboy Charlemagne, SRC, out of a cow called Jewel of Freedom that goes back to Tiara, which was a really nice cow that Mike McLeod owned for a while. I think she was almost 90 inches tip to tip. And then the second cow is Red Gunny May. She is a line bred cow that we raise that's golden white, and she's got a double twist. So she's really cool.
So the next item on your list was horn. So tell us a little bit about how important horn as a trait is to your breeding program.
So I go back and forth on this. It's important, if you want to go do the horn showcases and stuff like that. And a lot of people are chasing horn, which isn't bad. But I think the other things definitely need to be in that animal before you start chasing horn. The fertility and the milking and structure and disposition and all that. So once I get all that checked off the boxes, then I will start focusing on horn and bringing in genetics that are going to keep all those traits plus add more horn. So I do have my animals that I'm really focusing on pushing tip to tip, but it's not my number one goal, I would say. I want to keep that foundation animal first with the fertility and all the other things that we talked about first. So with my cow Queen Hildegard, she's been my best horn producer on tip to tip. So I'm really focusing with her on adding a little bit of size because she is smaller, and just keeping bringing in genetics with her that keep all her other good traits that she has. So when you got your other question on here, it said, what measurements, would you like to see? I think most people would say, which I asked on Facebook the other day, there's a lot of 12-month measurements, and it seems like that's not really important because they don't seem to grow much before 12 months old. So at 2, I really like to see like 50 inches tip to tip or a little over if these are animals that I'm really wanting to focus tip to tip on. Unless you're breeding for twist, it's kind of slower coming on. And so I think going forward, I'm going to have my genetics that I'm going to pull maybe a small herd off to focus on twist, and then a small herd to focus on really tip to tip that I feel like are package animals that I can keep adding tip to tip on.
Okay, so the next item on your post was genetics and pedigree. So let's start off with this subject. Tell us a little bit about what family is your favorite.
So the ones that we've raised that are my favorite would be the Red Gunny May, just because she's a blonde and tan and white cow with that double twist, and so she's really, really attractive, really pretty, and she passes that color and that twist on to her females. So that's my favorite in our herd. But if I'm looking at other people's herds and other genetics out there in the Longhorn industry, I love the Monica lines. I love Monica, and I like Tari Graves, Eternal Tari, anything Tari. I think those are 2 of the most productive female lines, and that I like, in my opinion. Those those are two of my favorites. I haven't gotten my hands on any Tari anything yet, but I do have 3 Monica granddaughters that I really like right now.
Okay.
So I'm going to be crossing those in with our stuff and see how that works.
And will those be part of your twist program or part of your program for tip to tip?
That's a good question.
To be determined.
Yeah, to be determined. I've got one of the Monique granddaughters. She's got a huge amount of total horn for her age, but she goes up and seriously twists back, and she's not even 3 yet. So she's like got the twist and the length that if you put the right bull with her, she could lay it down and have a lot of tip to tip. So we may switch her back and forth. Have a 1 year breeder for tip to tip and 1 year try to breed for twist. So I'm not sure yet on her, but right now they're all bred to Tejas Tactical. So we'll see how that goes.
Okay. So one of the things you mentioned when you were talking about how you like the Tari Graves line is just like looking at her and their pedigrees. So tell us a little bit about how you study pedigrees related to like the genetics, the production, all of the sorts of things we've already talked about, what you can tell from pedigrees.
Well, I spend a lot of time on Hired Hand on everyone's websites. So, once you find a female that I like, I trace, I go back and I'll look at, okay, well, who is her mother? And then I'll click on the mother and then I'll look at all the progeny and I'll see, how did they cross with certain bulls and certain genetics, and is it consistent and all that. And I think that, the Tari Graves line, it's so productive with any kind of different bull in a lot of different instances. So obviously, Danica, she's come out of the Tari Graves line, and she's one of probably the most famous cow in the Longhorn breed, and her mother, I know I can't remember her name. Touchdown Tari, I think is her name. I'm blanking on all this now. She's been super productive with other bulls and her female line is really strong. So I go backwards and I see what females are in those lines and what they cross well with, and just make sure that it's, like I said, it's consistent production with either the same bull or a variety of different bulls.
So have you ever been able to talk with the breeders of the cattle kind of further back that you like to find out what their logic was when they produced that animal?
No, I wouldn't say that I've talked to them. I watch, videos of interviews and stuff when I can find them and stuff like that, and read posts on Facebook and everything, and research as much as possible. But I'm kind of stuck in my office and at my house a lot. I don't get out to talk to anyone unless I call them up on the phone. I need to get out more, but I don't. I'm busy right now.
Now it's probably not a good time for that anyway.
No, I'm gonna stay home now anyway. My life has changed zero, if that tells you how bad my life
is. Okay, so the last thing on your list was color. Is there a particular color that you look for?
Anything but white. I don't like white.
Okay.
Because I think white is very dominant, and that's my least. Anything else, it's hard to pick. I don't have a favorite. I think it's hard. Our herd sire, our AD Bartholomew, was solid red, so we have a lot of solid red in our herd. So I have a little bit of a soft spot for a solid red cow, because a lot of the times if you'll breed her with a colorful bull, she'll have a colorful calf. So that's been my experience with my first bull I bought with Russell, our Rio Desperado Rose. He was a brindle lineback bull, and he threw every color that we could, except I think the only thing we didn't get was a Gorilla and a solid white calf out of him. He threw black, he threw black and white, he threw red and white lineback. I have a gold heifer out of him. I have brindle heifers out of him. And coming out of a predominantly red herd. So I don't mind a red cow, but just picking a favorite color, I think that's hard. There's just so many pretty colors in the Longhorn industry, and that's one thing I do like about the Longhorns is they're so unique. You never know what you're going to get sometimes.
Well, and it sounds like with all of your knowledge or your criteria of what you look for, it's probably hard to just look at color. You're probably
Yeah.
examining everything as the total package. So,
Yes, ma'am. If you've got color on top of all that, that's a home run. But um, I don't just pick a cow because of the color.
So what do you do if they meet everything else, all the other boxes are checked except color, they're white, then what?
I do have one white cow. Actually, I have two, so I can't say that I won't buy them. So yeah, I I I went against my own rule on that on two of them. One of them, she's more darker brownish white, and so I have gotten one heifer out of her that's speckling up, and one bull that's red and white spots. So he's not even white at all. And then the other one, she's only had one calf, and it was white. So we'll see how that goes. But everything else, they checked all the boxes, and the first one I bought that was white. She had really good genetics, really lateral horn. She had a great udder. She's super fertile. She got a little sick last year. She got an abscess in her tooth, and she lost a lot of weight. And she bred back even though she was sick, and she didn't abort the calf while we were treating her, and we got her over it, and got her weight back on her, and she calved 11 months after she had her calf last year. And so that fertility is really important to me. So, and she's got a big, nice udder and really super gentle. So that one, she really did check all the boxes when I bought her, even though she was white.
So out of all of these traits, did we go down them in your order of importance, or is there ones that you consider first before the others?
Yeah, y'all did. You went through them the same order that I would put them in. I know, some people might switch them around a little bit. They may put structure at the top and fertility second, or they may put disposition a little higher up than I did. But I do think that this is where I put my priorities on whenever I'm looking at an animal. So definitely, yeah, that's how I would do it. That's what I look at whenever I'm studying a cell animal or something that I want to keep in my herd, and really build a program around. So,
well, thanks for sharing all of this with us. Is there any other advice or insight that you'd like to share that we didn't ask you about?
um, I just think that definitely whenever people are going to put cows in sales, if they do have a hired hen website, they definitely need to fully utilize it. Put all your calves on your progeny on your cow. So a prospective buyer like me that's really looking at fertility can know, okay, she had a calf June 28, 2014, and then she had a calf June 1st, 2015. So we know, like, either put it in the comments or add it as an animal underneath the progeny on that cow, just so we know that, hey, this cow is fertile. Well, we know that she has had a calf every year, or if you pulled her out of the pasture and did AI work or did embryo work, put that in the notes or something so that we know the calving history on this animal. Or if it's a heifer, it's nice to see the mother of that heifer, see all of her progeny and all of her records. I just think people, whenever they put stuff in sales, definitely need to have all the information out there so that we can study it. That's one of my pet peeves. I like to know all the information about the cow, as much as I can find. And if they don't have a hard hands website, use horns on TLBA. You can record all your calves there too. So that's my one piece of advice.
How important is it to you when you're doing that research to be able to see updated photos of the calves?
Very important. If I'm looking at a cow to buy on a sale and there's a 3-year-old picture there, and it kind of concerns me. I mean, she may be completely healthy and fine in the picture, but what if she's lost weight or she's been sick, or any number of things now, and there's not an updated picture. It's important to me to see all the updated, just so you're fully aware of what you're buying. I don't think if you're spending all the money and time on bringing your animals to the sale, you should definitely let your prospective buyers know the full story.
Well, thanks, Gabi. I think this was really informative.
Yeah, no problem. It was fun to do.
Do you want to tell us your website one more time so folks can go visit?
This Rancho El Dios is not real easy to spell and remember. So our website is redlonghorns.com.
And then you also have a really great Instagram account.
Yes, ma'am. I believe it's under RED Longhorns too. And then our Facebook is Rancho El Dios Longhorns. But I think you can find it under RED Longhorns. I think that's the username. And
Jamie and I highly recommend following Gabi's Instagram. It's got a lot of great photos and information on it. So it's one of the better Longhorn accounts out there on Instagram.
I'm trying to keep it updated. Sometimes I get busy and forget to post, but I'm trying.
Well, thanks again for joining us, Gabi. We really appreciate it.
Thank y'all.